The sun beat down on the cracked earth like a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil, and Lily Northrop thought she might collapse right there in the furrows of her pathetic excuse for a field. She gripped the wooden plow handles until her palms bled, trying desperately to keep the blade cutting through soil that seemed harder than iron this scorching July afternoon in 1883. The mule, old and stubborn as sin, had stopped moving forward 20 minutes ago, and no amount of coaxing would convince him otherwise. Lily was 22 years old, a widow of 8 months, and she was losing her battle against the unforgiving Arizona Territory land just outside Bisbee. Her husband Thomas had died in a mining accident, leaving her with nothing but 40 acres of stubborn earth and debts that would take a lifetime to repay. The bank had given her until harvest time to prove she could make something of this land, or they would take it from her just as surely as death had taken Thomas. She wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her face. Her dark hair, once pinned neatly beneath her bonnet, now hung in damp strands around her shoulders. The simple cotton dress she wore was soaked through with perspiration, and her boots were caked with red Arizona clay. "Come on, you stubborn beast," she pleaded with the mule, giving the reins a gentle tug. The animal simply flicked his ears and remained planted like a tree stump. That was when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the direction of the main road. Lily looked up, shading her eyes against the brutal sun, and saw a rider making his way across the open ground toward her struggling operation. Her heart sank a little. She did not need witnesses to her failure, did not need some passing stranger to see how utterly incapable she was of managing this land on her own. The rider drew closer, and she could make out more details. He sat tall in the saddle, a man who clearly spent most of his life on horseback. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun, a faded blue shirt, and worn leather chaps over his dusty trousers. As he approached, he slowed his horse to a walk, then stopped at the edge of her field. "Afternoon, madam," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance between them. "Looks like you might be having some trouble there." Lily straightened her back, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity even though she knew she looked like something the cat dragged in. "I am managing just fine, thank you," she replied, her voice sharper than she intended. The man dismounted in one smooth motion and walked his horse closer. Now that he was on foot, she could see he was probably in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and a strong jaw shadowed with a few days' worth of stubble. His eyes were the color of good whiskey, warm brown with flecks of gold, and they studied her situation with an assessing gaze that made her feel simultaneously irritated and oddly exposed. "Name is Benjamin Ellis," he said, touching the brim of his hat in a polite gesture. "I run cattle on the spread about 3 miles east of here. I was riding past when I saw you working." "Lily Northrop," she replied curtly. "And as I said, I have things under control." Benjamin looked at the motionless mule, then at the barely plowed field, then back at Lily. One corner of his mouth twitched as if he might smile, but he seemed to think better of it. "Madam, I mean no disrespect, but that mule does not look like he is planning to move any time soon." "He is just taking a rest," Lily insisted stubbornly, "in the middle of your field." "He has had a long morning." Benjamin nodded slowly as if this made perfect sense. "I see. Well, I've got nothing pressing for the next few hours. Would you mind if I lent a hand? I promise I am good with stubborn animals." Lily wanted to refuse. She wanted to send this man and his knowing eyes and his obvious competence right back where he came from. But her hands were bleeding, her back was screaming in pain, and the sun was not getting any cooler. Most importantly, she had exactly 6 weeks to get this field plowed, planted, and showing some promise of a harvest, or she would lose everything. "I cannot pay you," she said finally, her voice tight with the shame of having to admit it. "Did not ask for payment," Benjamin replied easily. He was already tying his horse to the fence post at the edge of the property. Sometimes folks just help each other out. That is how things work out here, or how they should work anyway. Before Lily could protest further, Benjamin had walked over to the mule and was running his hand along the animal's neck, speaking in a low, soothing voice she could not quite make out. The mule's ears swiveled toward him, and then, to Lily's absolute astonishment, the stubborn creature actually took a few steps forward. "How did you do that?" she asked, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. "Just asked him nicely," Benjamin said, a genuine smile crossing his face this time. "Now, why don't you let me handle the plow for a while? You look like you could use some water and a rest in the shade." Everything in Lily wanted to refuse. She had been fighting so hard to prove she could manage on her own that she did not need anyone's help or pity. But her body betrayed her pride, swaying slightly with exhaustion, and Benjamin was at her side in an instant, his hand steadying her elbow. "When did you last eat something?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "This morning," she lied. It had actually been yesterday afternoon, but she was not about to admit that to this stranger. "There is food in my saddlebag," Benjamin said, steering her gently toward the fence. "Dried beef and some biscuits. Not fancy, but it will keep you going." Lily found herself seated on the ground in the meager shade of a mesquite tree, accepting water from Benjamin's canteen and food from his supplies. She told herself she was only allowing this because she needed to keep up her strength to finish the work, but deep down, she knew she was simply too tired to fight anymore. She watched as Benjamin returned to the field and took up position behind the plow. His movements were practiced and efficient, his body settling into the rhythm of the work as naturally as breathing. The mule, that traitorous beast, moved forward steadily under Benjamin's guidance, and the plow blade bit deep into the earth, turning over furrow after furrow of dark soil. Lily chewed on the dried beef and felt tears prickling at her eyes. She was not sure if they came from gratitude, exhaustion, or the overwhelming sense of relief at watching someone make actual progress on the work that had been defeating her for weeks. She blinked them back fiercely. She had cried enough in the past 8 months to last a lifetime. An hour passed, then 2. The sun began its slow descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Benjamin worked steadily, stopping occasionally to wipe his forehead or give the mule a rest. He had removed his shirt at some point, draping it over the fence, and Lily found her gaze drawn to the play of muscles across his back as he worked. She quickly looked away, feeling heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. As the light began to fade, Benjamin guided the mule to the end of the last row and then walked the animal back toward where Lily sat. He was drenched in sweat, his hair plastered to his head, but he wore an expression of satisfaction. "That is all I can do today while there is still light to see by," he said, accepting his canteen back from Lily and taking a long drink. "But you have got about half the field done now. That is good progress." Lily stood up, brushing dirt from her skirt, and looked out at the transformed field. What had been a pitiful patchwork of broken furrows was now neat, orderly rows of turned earth, ready for planting. "I do not know how to thank you," she said quietly. "No thanks needed," Benjamin replied, retrieving his shirt and pulling it back on. "But I will tell you straight, madam. This field is going to need a lot more work in the coming weeks. Plowing is just the start. You are going to need to get seeds in the ground, and then there is the watering and weeding and all the rest of it." "I know," Lily said, her voice defensive again. "I can manage it." Benjamin held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I am sure you can. I am just saying if you would like some help, I could ride over in the evenings after I am done with my own work. It would not take much time, and it seems a shame to let good land go to waste." Lily studied his face, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but she found only honest goodwill. Still, she hesitated. She barely knew this man. "Why would you do that?" she asked bluntly. "What do you want from me?" Something flickered in Benjamin's eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or maybe just weariness. "Not everyone wants something, Mrs. Northrop. Some people are just trying to be decent. But if it makes you feel better, you can feed me supper when I come by. That seems like a fair trade for a few hours of work." Lily felt ashamed of her suspicion, but life had taught her to be cautious. Still, she desperately needed the help, and there was something about this man that felt trustworthy, even if she could not quite explain why. "All right," she said finally. "If you truly do not mind, I would appreciate the help, and I can make a decent meal at least." "Then it is settled," Benjamin said, a smile breaking across his face that transformed his whole demeanor. "I will come by tomorrow evening if that suits you." "Tomorrow evening," Lily agreed. Benjamin untied his horse and swung up into the saddle with easy grace. "One more thing," he said, looking down at her. "You should get something on those hands. They are going to get infected if you are not careful." Lily looked down at her palms, which were indeed a mess of broken blisters and dried blood. "I will take care of it," she said. "Make sure you do," Benjamin replied. Then, with a final touch to his hat brim, he turned his horse toward home and rode off into the gathering dusk. Lily stood there long after he had disappeared, one hand pressed to her chest where her heart was beating with an unfamiliar flutter. She told herself it was just relief at having help with the work, nothing more. But as she walked back to the small, shabby house at the edge of the property, she found herself already thinking about tomorrow evening, about seeing Benjamin Ellis again. That night, she cleaned her hands carefully and wrapped them in strips of clean cloth. She ate a small supper of beans and cornbread, then sat at the rickety table by lamplight and did something she had not done in months. She took out her good dress, the dark green one she had worn to church socials back when Thomas was alive, and examined it for tears or stains. Finding it passable, she hung it up carefully, already planning to wear it tomorrow. Then she caught herself and felt foolish. This was not a social call. This was a business arrangement, a simple exchange of labor for food. There was no reason to dress up or to feel this strange anticipation humming through her veins. But when she finally lay down in her narrow bed, sleep would not come easily, and when it did, she dreamed of warm brown eyes and strong hands that could gentle a stubborn mule with just a touch. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lily forced herself to focus on the 100 tasks that always needed doing around the property. She fed the chickens, collected their few eggs, hauled water from the well, and spent hours in the garden pulling weeds from around the struggling vegetables. But her gaze kept drifting toward the eastern horizon, watching for the telltale cloud of dust that would signal a rider approaching. When the sun finally began its descent, and she still saw no sign of Benjamin, doubt crept in. Perhaps he had reconsidered. Perhaps he had just been making polite conversation yesterday and had no real intention of returning. Perhaps she had been foolish to believe that anyone would help her without expecting something in return. She was inside the house, stirring a pot of stew and berating herself for having changed into the good dress, when she heard the sound of hoofbeats outside. Her heart leaped, and she quickly checked her reflection in the small mirror by the door, tucking a strand of hair back into place before hurrying outside. Benjamin was dismounting near the field, and this time he had brought something with him. A large canvas bag was slung across his saddle, and as Lily approached, he lifted it down and set it on the ground. "Evening, Mrs. Northrop," he called out. "Hope I am not too late." "Not at all," Lily said, trying to keep her voice casual. "I just put supper on. It will be ready in about an hour." "Perfect timing then," Benjamin said. He opened the canvas bag and began pulling out items. "I brought some things that might help. Got some good seed corn here and some beans too. And this," he produced a pair of worn but serviceable leather gloves. "These might save your hands from more damage." Lily stared at the supplies spread out on the ground. Seed was expensive, and she had been agonizing over how she would afford enough to plant even half the field. "I cannot accept all this," she protested. "It is too much." "They are just seeds," Benjamin said with a shrug. "I bought extra this spring and will not use them all. They will just go to waste if someone does not plant them." Lily suspected this was not entirely true, but she also knew arguing would be pointless. "Then let me pay you for them," she said. "I do not have much cash, but I could give you eggs or some vegetables from the garden once they come in." "The supper you promised is payment enough," Benjamin insisted. "Now we are losing good working light standing here talking. Let me get this field finished, and then we can discuss planting strategies over that meal you mentioned." Before Lily could argue further, he was already heading toward the field, pulling on the gloves he had brought for himself. She stood there holding the pair he had given her, feeling the soft leather against her bandaged palms, and something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. She went back inside and checked on the stew, then came back out with a bucket of water and a ladle in case Benjamin got thirsty. She set it near the fence and then, not wanting to simply stand there watching like some useless ornament, she took up a hoe and began working in the garden plot closer to the house. But she found it impossible not to glance up frequently, watching the way Benjamin moved behind the plow with such easy competence. He had a quiet confidence about him, a sureness in his movements that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. It was attractive, she admitted to herself, though the thought made her feel guilty. Was it disloyal to Thomas's memory to notice another man this way? But Thomas had been gone for 8 months, and she was only 22 years old. Surely she was not expected to spend the rest of her life alone, never looking at another man, never feeling anything again. The thought was both liberating and terrifying. As the sun touched the horizon, Benjamin finished the last of the plowing and brought the mule back to the small barn. Lily had already gone inside to set out plates and utensils on the table, and she was ladling stew into bowls when she heard him at the door. "Come in," she called out. "There is a basin of water on the porch if you want to wash up." She heard the splash of water, and then Benjamin appeared in the doorway, his hair damp, his face and hands clean. He had put his hat on a peg by the door, and without it, she could see he had a strong, honest face with laugh lines around his eyes. He was handsome in a weathered, practical way that suited this hard land. "Smells wonderful in here," he said appreciatively, taking the seat she indicated across from her at the small table. "It is just stew," Lily said, suddenly feeling shy. "Nothing fancy." "Fancy is overrated," Benjamin replied. He waited until she had sat down before picking up his spoon, she noticed. Good manners, despite the rough exterior. "I have eaten my own cooking for the past 3 years, and believe me, anything that does not taste like burned leather is a feast." Lily felt herself smile despite her nervousness. 3 years? You have been running your ranch alone all that time, Benjamin nodded, swallowing a mouthful of stew. "My father died 3 years ago. My mother had already passed when I was young. It was just me and my brother for a while, but he had itchy feet. Headed to California 2 years back. Have not heard from him since." "I am sorry," Lily said quietly. "No need to be. He was never cut out for ranching anyway. Me, I cannot imagine doing anything else." He took another bite and made an appreciative sound. "This is really good. You have got away with seasoning." "My mother taught me," Lily said. "Before she died, I mean. That was 6 years ago. My father followed her within the year. He just seemed to give up once she was gone." "So you and your husband, you came out here on your own then?" Lily nodded, stirring her stew without really eating it. "Thomas thought we could make a fresh start. He got work in the mines and we saved up enough for this land. He had big plans. Was going to work the mines until we had enough money to really do the ranch right, buy cattle, hire help. He had it all figured out." "The mines are dangerous work," Benjamin said carefully. He knew that. We both did. But he was always so careful, so thorough about everything. It seemed impossible that anything could happen to him. Lily's voice had dropped to almost a whisper. "It was a Tuesday afternoon. Some of the support beams failed. They said he died instantly, that he would not have suffered. I suppose that was meant to comfort me." Benjamin set down his spoon and reached across the table, covering her hand with his own. The gesture was so natural, so comforting, that Lily did not pull away. "I am sorry," he said simply. "That is an unbearable thing to lose someone that way." They sat like that for a moment, his rough, warm hand covering her smaller one, and Lily felt something crack in the walls she had built around her grief. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another, and she pulled her hand back to wipe them away, embarrassed. "I apologize," she said. "I did not mean to make this uncomfortable." "You did not," Benjamin assured her. "Grief is nothing to apologize for. You loved him. That is clear. And 8 months is no time at all when you have lost someone important." Lily took a shaky breath and forced herself to eat some of the stew. They continued the meal in companionable silence for a while, and gradually she felt herself settling again. There was something peaceful about Benjamin's presence, she realized. He did not feel the need to fill every silence with chatter, but neither did he make the quiet feel awkward or tense. "So what is your plan for the field?" Benjamin asked eventually, steering the conversation to safer ground. "What are you hoping to grow?" "Corn mostly," Lily said, grateful for the change of subject. "And beans." "I was thinking if I could get a good harvest, I could sell some to the mercantile in town and use the rest to get through the winter. Maybe have enough left over to buy a few head of cattle come spring." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "That is a solid plan. The soil here is good if you can keep it watered. The hard part is going to be irrigation. That creek at the edge of your property, it runs pretty steady. In the spring and early summer, yes, but it gets pretty low come August and September. You are going to need to dig some irrigation channels then, get the water to the field when you need it. That is heavy work." "I can manage it," Lily said automatically. Benjamin gave her a long look. "I am sure you could, but it would take you weeks on your own." "What if I brought some of my ranch hands over next Sunday? We could get the whole system dug out in one day with enough men working on it." "I cannot ask you to do that," Lily protested. "You have already done so much. You are not asking. I am offering. Besides, my hands are good men, but they get bored with the same routine. They would probably enjoy a change of pace." Benjamin grinned. "And if you could make enough of this stew to feed everyone, I guarantee they would consider it the best day's work they have had all year." Lily found herself smiling back. "All right," she said, "but I insist on feeding everyone properly. It is the least I can do." "Deal," Benjamin said, extending his hand across the table. Lily shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip, and that strange flutter in her chest started up again. They finished the meal and Lily brought out a small apple pie she had made that morning. Benjamin ate 2 generous slices and declared it the best thing he had tasted in years. Then he helped her clear the dishes, insisting over her protests that it was only fair since she had cooked. As they worked side by side in the small kitchen, washing and drying plates by lamplight, Lily felt an unexpected sense of rightness. It had been so long since she had shared these simple domestic moments with anyone. She had forgotten how pleasant it could be, the easy rhythm of working alongside another person, the casual conversation that flowed naturally. "I should get going," Benjamin said eventually, hanging the dish towel on its hook. "It is a fair ride back to my place, and I've got cattle to check on early tomorrow." Lily walked him to the door, suddenly not wanting him to leave. "Thank you again," she said, "for everything. I do not know what I would have done without your help." "You would have figured something out," Benjamin said confidently. "You strike me as the kind of woman who finds a way no matter what." He collected his hat from the peg and settled it on his head. "I will be back tomorrow evening if that is all right. We should get those seeds in the ground soon." "Tomorrow evening," Lily agreed. "I will have supper waiting." Benjamin paused at the threshold, seeming to want to say something more. Finally, he just touched his hat brim and said, "Good night, Mrs. Northrop." "Lily," she said impulsively. "You can call me Lily." His face softened. "Lily. That is a pretty name. Suits you." Then, before she could respond, he was gone, his boots crunching across the hard, packed earth toward where his horse waited. Lily stood in the doorway and watched him ride away, his silhouette gradually disappearing into the darkness. When she could no longer see him, she went back inside and began the process of getting ready for bed. But her mind was racing, replaying every moment of the evening, every word they had exchanged, every time his hand had brushed against hers when they were washing dishes. She told herself firmly that she was reading too much into simple kindness. Benjamin was just being a good neighbor, helping someone in need. That was all. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she could not shake the feeling that something had shifted today, that some door had opened that she had thought was sealed shut forever. True to his word, Benjamin returned the next evening and the evening after that. They fell into an easy pattern. He would work in the field until the light failed, then come inside for supper. Afterward, they would talk for an hour or more, sitting on the porch if the evening was cool enough, or at the kitchen table if the heat was too oppressive. Lily learned that Benjamin had grown up on the ranch he now ran, that his father had come to Arizona Territory in the 1860s and had built the operation from nothing. Benjamin had a love for the land that matched her own, a deep appreciation for the harsh beauty of the desert and mountains that surrounded them. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her parents and the little farm where she had grown up. She told him about meeting Thomas at a church social, about their courtship and their dreams of building a life together in the West. With each passing evening, Lily felt herself relaxing more in Benjamin's presence. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh in a way she had not laughed in months. He was thoughtful too, asking her opinions on things and actually listening to her answers, treating her ideas as valuable rather than dismissing them the way some men did. By the end of the week, the field was fully planted, neat rows of seeds buried in the dark earth, waiting for sun and water to coax them into life. Benjamin showed Lily how to set up a basic irrigation system using the creek water, running channels that would flood the field on a schedule. On Sunday, just as he had promised, Benjamin arrived mid-morning with 4 of his ranch hands. They were a rough-looking bunch at first glance, sun-weathered men with hard hands and harder lives, but they treated Lily with unfailing respect, calling her madam and thanking her profusely for the lunch she had prepared. They worked with remarkable efficiency, digging irrigation channels and building up earthen berms to direct water flow. What would have taken Lily weeks, possibly months, was accomplished in a single day. By late afternoon, the system was complete and functional. Lily had cooked an enormous supper, using most of her remaining supplies to make a feast for the men who had worked so hard. She set everything out on a long plank table Benjamin had rigged up in the yard, and the men ate with obvious appreciation, complimenting her cooking between mouthfuls. As the meal wound down and the men began making preparations to leave, the oldest of them, a weathered cowboy named Jack, pulled Lily aside. "Madam, I have known Ben Ellis since he was knee-high to a grasshopper," Jack said quietly. "I worked for his father, and I have been working for him since the old man passed. In all that time, I have never seen him take to anyone the way he has taken to you." Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He is just being a good neighbor," she said. Jack shook his head. "Ben is a good man, that is true. He would help anybody in need, but this is different. The way he talks about you, the way his whole face lights up when he mentions riding over here." The old cowboy smiled. "I just thought you should know. That man is halfway to being in love with you if he is not there already." Before Lily could formulate a response, Jack tipped his hat and headed back to the others. She stood there in the fading light, her heart pounding, wondering if it could possibly be true. That evening, after the ranch hands had left, Benjamin stayed behind to help Lily clean up. They worked together washing the mountain of dishes, and Lily found herself hyper-aware of his presence beside her, of the warmth of his body in the small space, of the way his arm occasionally brushed against hers. "Your men did amazing work today," she said, needing to fill the charged silence. "I cannot thank you enough." "They are good people," Benjamin agreed. "Hard workers, loyal. A man could not ask for better. That Jack seems to have been with you a long time. Since I was 8 years old. He is like family at this point." Benjamin dried the last plate and set it on the shelf. "In fact, he gave me some unsolicited advice on the ride over this morning." "Oh," Lily tried to sound casual. "What kind of advice?" Benjamin turned to face her fully, leaning back against the counter. In the lamplight, his eyes were dark and serious. "He told me I was being a fool. That I should stop dancing around my feelings and just be honest with you." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Honest about what?" "About the fact that I did not stop that first day just because I saw you struggling with that mule." Benjamin's voice was quiet but steady. "I stopped because I could not help myself. Because even from a distance, you were the most beautiful thing I had seen in longer than I could remember. And then I talked to you, and I found out you were brave and stubborn and proud and so much stronger than you gave yourself credit for." He took a step closer. "I have tried to tell myself I was just being neighborly, just helping someone in need, but that is not the whole truth. The truth is, I look forward to coming here every evening. The truth is, I think about you when I should be thinking about my work. The truth is, Lily Northrop, I am falling in love with you." Lily stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. A dozen different emotions warred inside her. Joy, fear, guilt, hope, all tangled together into a knot she could not begin to unravel. "I know it is too soon," Benjamin continued when she did not speak. "I know you are still grieving your husband, and I respect that. I am not asking you to feel the same way right now. I just needed to be honest, to stop pretending this was just about plowing a field or planting seeds. It stopped being just that the moment I saw your face." "Benjamin," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper, "I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he assured her. "I do not want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. If you want me to stop coming around, I will respect that, though I hope you will not ask me to." "No," Lily said quickly. "No, I do not want that. I just need time to think, to understand what I am feeling." Benjamin nodded, relief evident on his face. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." He collected his hat and moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. "But I want you to know one more thing. The way I feel about you, it does not dishonor Thomas's memory. You loved him, and that love was real and important. But you are still alive, Lily. You are allowed to live, to feel things, to want things. Anyone who truly loved you would want that for you." Then he was gone, leaving Lily standing alone in the kitchen with tears streaming down her face. But they were not tears of sadness, at least not entirely. They were complicated tears, full of too many emotions to name. She did not sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the darkness, thinking about Benjamin's words, about the way her heart had leaped when he said he was falling in love with her. Because the terrifying, wonderful truth was that she was falling in love with him too. It had been creeping up on her for days, in the way she found herself watching for him each evening, in the way she took extra care with her appearance on the days she knew he would be coming by, in the way her whole day seemed brighter just from knowing she would see him. She had been trying so hard to deny it, to tell herself it was impossible, too soon, wrong somehow. But Benjamin was right. She was still alive, and the feelings growing inside her were real and undeniable. Over the next few days, Lily grappled with her emotions. She visited Thomas's grave in the small cemetery on the edge of Bisbee, sitting on the hard ground beside the simple wooden marker and trying to sort through the tangle of feelings in her heart. "I do not want to forget you," she said aloud to the grave, not caring if anyone heard her talking to the dead. "I do not want to dishonor what we had. But I am so lonely, Thomas, and there is this man, and he makes me feel things I thought I would never feel again." The wind whispered through the sparse grass, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Of course there was no answer, no sign, no permission granted or denied. But sitting there in the quiet, Lily felt a sense of peace begin to settle over her. Thomas was gone. That was the hard, immutable truth. And she could spend the rest of her life grieving, or she could choose to live again. She made her decision. That evening, when Benjamin arrived as usual, Lily met him at the fence. He had been coming by faithfully every night, helping her check the irrigation channels and make sure water was reaching all the planted seeds. But there had been a new carefulness between them since his confession, a politeness that had not been there before. "Benjamin," she said before he could dismount, "could we talk? Before you start working, I mean." His expression turned wary, as if he was bracing himself for bad news. "Of course," he said, swinging down from the saddle. They walked together to the porch and sat on the steps, looking out at the field that was already showing the first green shoots of emerging plants. Lily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I have been doing a lot of thinking since you told me how you felt," she began. "And I have been fighting with myself, trying to figure out what is right, what is appropriate, what is too soon." "Lily, I told you there is no pressure," Benjamin started, but she held up a hand. "Please let me finish. I need to say this." She took another breath. "The truth is, I have been falling for you too. It terrified me at first because I thought it meant I had not loved Thomas enough, or that I was betraying his memory somehow. But I have been sitting with that feeling and I realize it is not true. I did love Thomas. I will always love the memory of what we had, but that does not mean I cannot have feelings for someone else for you." Benjamin's eyes had grown bright with hope. "Lily," he said softly, "I am not saying I am ready for everything," she continued. "I am still figuring things out. But I do not want you to stop coming around. More than that, I want you to know that what I feel when I am with you, it is real. You make me happy in a way I did not think I could be happy again, and that is worth something. That is worth a lot, actually." Benjamin reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You have no idea how glad I am to hear you say that," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I was trying to be patient, but it was killing me, thinking you might send me away." Lily squeezed his hand. "I do not want to rush things," she said. "But I do not want to waste time either, not when life has already shown me how short and uncertain it can be." "Then we will take this at whatever pace feels right to you," Benjamin said. "I just want to be with you, Lily. However that looks, whatever you are comfortable with." They sat together on the porch steps as the sun set, hands linked, and talked about what came next. They agreed to continue as they had been, with Benjamin coming by in the evenings, but now without the pretense that it was only about the work. They were courting, old-fashioned as that sounded, getting to know each other with the intention of building something real. Over the following weeks, Lily felt herself blossoming like the crops growing in her field. The grief and heaviness that had weighed on her for so long began to lift, replaced by a tentative but growing joy. She smiled more, laughed more, found herself singing while she worked in the garden. Benjamin was a steady, reliable presence in her life. He came by every evening without fail, and they developed new routines. After checking the field and doing whatever work needed doing, they would sit together on the porch and talk until the stars came out. Sometimes Benjamin would bring his guitar, a battered old instrument that had belonged to his father, and he would play while Lily sang along to the songs she knew. Other times they would simply sit in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, watching the desert sky turn from orange to purple to black. One evening in early August, Benjamin arrived with a surprise. He led Lily to the barn and showed her a young milk cow he had brought over, tied to the back of his saddle. "She is a good producer," he explained. "Gentle, too. I thought she might be useful to you, give you some milk to sell in town or make butter and cheese with." Lily ran her hand along the cow's flank, touched beyond words. "Benjamin, this is too much. I cannot keep accepting such generous gifts from you." "She is not really a gift," Benjamin said with a grin. "More like a loan. I am hoping you will let me come by for fresh milk sometimes. Mine are all beef cattle. I have been buying milk in town, and it is never as good as fresh." Lily knew this was probably not entirely true, but she had learned that Benjamin had his pride too, that he needed to frame his generosity in ways that did not make her feel like a charity case. So she accepted the cow with grace and named her Bessie, and Benjamin showed her the best techniques for milking. In late August, the corn began to mature, the stalks growing tall and strong, the ears filling out with plump kernels. The bean plants were thriving too, their vines heavy with pods. It was going to be a good harvest, better than Lily had dared hope. One Saturday morning, Benjamin arrived earlier than usual, dressed in clean clothes with his hair slicked back. "I was hoping you might come into town with me today," he said. "There is a social at the church, and I would like to take you if you are willing." Lily hesitated. Going to a social together would be a public declaration of their relationship. Everyone in Bisbee would see them, would talk about them. Was she ready for that? But then she looked at Benjamin's hopeful face and realized that yes, she was ready. More than ready. She was tired of hiding her feelings, of acting like what they had was something to be ashamed of. "I would like that very much," she said. "Just give me a few minutes to change." She put on her best dress, the green one she had worn that first night he had stayed for supper, and pinned her hair up carefully. When she emerged from the house, Benjamin's face lit up in a way that made her feel beautiful. They rode into Bisbee together, with Lily seated behind Benjamin on his horse, her arms wrapped around his waist. It felt intimate and right, and she found herself resting her cheek against his back, breathing in the scent of him, leather and soap and something uniquely Benjamin. The church social was in full swing when they arrived. Tables had been set up in the shade of the old cottonwood trees, laden with food and drink. Children ran around playing games while adults stood in clusters, talking and laughing. Music drifted from a small group of musicians near the church steps. As Benjamin and Lily walked into the gathering together, Lily felt multiple pairs of eyes turn toward them. Conversations paused. She held her head high, keeping her hand in Benjamin's, refusing to feel ashamed. An older woman approached them, someone Lily recognized from the mercantile. "Mrs. Northrop," the woman said coolly. "I had heard you and Mr. Ellis were spending time together. Is it not a bit soon after your husband's death to be stepping out with another man?" Before Lily could formulate a response, Benjamin stepped forward. "With respect, Mrs. Henderson, I do not believe the timing of Mrs. Northrop's personal life is any of your business. She is a grown woman who has been through more hardship in the past year than most people face in a lifetime. If she has found some happiness, I would think any decent person would be glad for her rather than critical." Mrs. Henderson huffed indignantly and walked away, but several other people nearby nodded in agreement with Benjamin's words. An older gentleman stepped forward and extended his hand. "Ben Ellis, you are absolutely right," he said. "Mrs. Northrop, please do not let the gossips bother you. My own wife passed 5 years ago, and I have been stepping out with the widow Miller for the past year. Some people will always find something to criticize, but life is too short to let them dictate how you live it." More people came over to greet them after that, and Lily was surprised to find that most were kind and welcoming. Yes, there were a few disapproving looks and whispered comments, but the majority of folks seemed genuinely happy to see her out and about again, pleased that she had found companionship with a good man like Benjamin Ellis. They stayed for several hours, eating food and talking with neighbors. Benjamin introduced Lily to people she had not met before, always keeping her close by his side, always making it clear through his actions and words that she was important to him, that he was proud to be with her. When the musicians started playing dancing music, Benjamin bowed formally and offered Lily his hand. "May I have this dance?" Lily felt suddenly nervous. "I have not danced in so long. I am not sure I remember how." "Then we will figure it out together," Benjamin said with that gentle smile that always made her heart flutter. They moved into the space cleared for dancing, and Benjamin's arms came around her, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. The music was a simple waltz, and after a few tentative steps, Lily found the rhythm coming back to her. They danced together under the cottonwood trees, spinning slowly, and Lily felt like she was floating. Benjamin was a better dancer than she would have expected, moving with the same natural grace he brought to everything else he did. He held her close, but not inappropriately so, and when she looked up into his face, she saw such tenderness in his eyes that it took her breath away. "I am falling more in love with you every day," he said quietly, his lips close to her ear. "I hope that is all right to say." "It is more than all right," Lily whispered back. "Because I love you too, Benjamin. I think I have for a while now, even when I was too scared to admit it." Benjamin's arms tightened around her, and they continued to dance, oblivious now to everyone else around them, lost in their own world. As summer turned toward fall, the relationship between Lily and Benjamin deepened. He was at her house nearly every day now, not just in the evenings, but often arriving early to help with the heavier work she could not manage alone. In turn, Lily would ride over to his ranch on some afternoons, bringing him lunch and staying to help with whatever needed doing. His ranch hands had grown accustomed to her presence, and they treated her with easy friendliness now, joking with her the way they joked with each other. Jack, the old cowboy who had first told her about Benjamin's feelings, seemed particularly pleased with how things had developed. "Told you he was sweet on you," Jack said one afternoon when Lily arrived with a basket of fresh baked bread. "That boy has been downright cheerful lately. It is unsettling, frankly. He is usually so serious all the time." Lily laughed. "He seems plenty serious to me." "That is because you have not known him as long as I have. Trust me, this is a new Benjamin Ellis. A better one, if you ask me." In September, they harvested Lily's field together. Benjamin brought his hands over again, and they worked from dawn until dusk, bringing in the corn and beans. It was back-breaking work, but there was also joy in it, in seeing the fruits of their labor, in knowing that the field that had seemed so impossible just a few months ago had produced a bounty. Lily took her produce to the mercantile in town and was able to sell a good portion of it for fair prices. After paying off some of her debts, she still had money left over, more than she had seen in months. For the first time since Thomas died, she felt like she might actually be able to make a go of the property. One evening in late September, Benjamin arrived with a serious expression on his face. They had finished checking the field, now empty of crops and ready to be prepared for winter, and were sitting on the porch watching the sun set. "Lily, there is something I need to ask you," Benjamin said, his voice formal in a way that made Lily's heart skip. "All right," she said, turning to face him fully. Benjamin took both her hands in his. "I know we have only been courting for a few months. By most people's standards, that is not very long, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life than I am of this." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Lily. I love your strength and your stubbornness and your kind heart. I love the way you sing while you work and the way you care for that ridiculous old mule. I love every single thing about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He released one of her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's ring. It is the only thing I have left of her. I would be honored if you would wear it, if you would agree to marry me." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. Her heart was so full she thought it might burst. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Benjamin, I will marry you." Benjamin's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a long, sweet kiss that tasted of promise and forever. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. "I was so nervous," Benjamin admitted. "I was terrified you would say it was too soon, that you needed more time." "I thought about waiting," Lily confessed, "about whether people would think it was too fast. But then I realized I do not care what people think. I know what I feel. I know I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. That is all that matters." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. They decided on a small wedding, just close friends and family, to be held at the church in Bisbee. They would live on Benjamin's ranch, which was larger and more established, but they would keep Lily's property as well, using it to grow crops while Benjamin's land was used for cattle. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning. Lily wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, and Benjamin wore his best suit, looking so handsome it made her heart ache. Jack stood up as Benjamin's best man, and Lily had asked Sarah Thompson, a woman she had become friendly with in town, to stand up with her. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Benjamin kissed her in front of everyone, Lily felt a completeness she had never expected to feel again. This was different from what she had had with Thomas, but it was no less real, no less valuable. After the ceremony, there was a reception at the church with food and music and dancing. Lily danced with her new husband until her feet hurt, and she did not care. She was so happy she felt like she might float away. As evening fell and they prepared to leave for Benjamin's ranch, now their ranch, her ranch too, Lily took a moment to stand alone in the churchyard, looking up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I hope you understand," she whispered, thinking of Thomas. "I hope you would be happy for me. I will never forget you, never stop being grateful for the time we had. But I am choosing to live to love again. I think you would want that for me." The wind rustled through the trees, and in that moment, Lily felt a sense of peace and rightness settle over her. She was not betraying the past by embracing the future. She was honoring both, carrying her memories forward into this new chapter of her life. Benjamin appeared at her side, slipping his arm around her waist. "You ready to go home?" he asked softly. "Home. Their home." "Yes," Lily said, leaning into his warmth. "I am ready." They rode back to the ranch together, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lily felt completely at peace. The grief that had defined her for so long had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something softer, something she could carry without it consuming her. That night, lying in Benjamin's arms in the big bed that was now theirs, Lily reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. A year ago, she had been drowning in grief and despair, convinced she would lose everything, that her life was essentially over. But then a rancher had seen her struggling to plow a field, had stopped to help, and everything had changed. He had given her not just his labor but his heart, his steady presence, his unwavering belief in her. And in doing so, he had given her back her life. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "About that first day," Lily said. "When you stopped to help with that stubborn mule. Did you have any idea where it would lead?" Benjamin chuckled. "I had hopes, but I was afraid to believe they might come true." "You were so fierce that day, so determined to do everything yourself." "I thought accepting help meant admitting defeat," Lily said. "I understand now that it was actually the bravest thing I could do." "You have always been brave," Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Long before I came along." They talked late into the night, sharing stories and dreams and plans for the future. They would expand the cattle operation, Benjamin said, maybe hire another hand or two. They would plant Lily's field again come spring, rotate crops to keep the soil healthy. They talked about children, about the family they hoped to build together. "How many do you want?" Lily asked. "As many as we are blessed with," Benjamin replied. "Though I will admit, I have always imagined a whole houseful. I was lonely growing up, just me and my brother. I would like our children to have siblings, to always have someone to rely on." "I would like that too," Lily said. "A house full of noise and laughter and chaos." "Controlled chaos, hopefully," Benjamin said with a laugh. "There is no such thing when it comes to children," Lily assured him. "But we will manage. We make a good team." "The best team," Benjamin agreed, pulling her closer. The winter months passed in a blur of happiness. Lily settled into life on the ranch, learning the rhythms of cattle ranching, making the house truly theirs by adding her own touches to the rooms. She sewed new curtains, planted a winter garden, and started planning for the spring planting season. Benjamin was an attentive husband, always making sure she felt included in decisions about the ranch, valuing her input. The ranch hands treated her with respect, and Jack in particular seemed to take paternal pride in her growing skills around the ranch. In February, Lily discovered she was pregnant. She told Benjamin one evening after supper, and he swept her up in his arms and spun her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." "We are," Lily confirmed, joy bubbling up inside her. "Come late summer, there will be 3 of us." Benjamin placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach, his expression one of wonder. "I promise I will take care of you both," he said solemnly. I will do everything in my power to make sure you are both safe and happy." "I know you will," Lily said, covering his hand with hers. "I trust you completely." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Benjamin became almost comically protective, not wanting Lily to do any heavy lifting or strenuous work. She found it endearing even when it became a little excessive. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she would remind him when he tried to prevent her from doing normal tasks. "I know," Benjamin would reply, "but humor me. You are carrying the most precious cargo in the world." In early September, 2 days after their first wedding anniversary, Lily went into labor. Benjamin sent one of the ranch hands racing to town for the midwife while he stayed by Lily's side, holding her hand and trying to hide how terrified he was. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. But finally, as the sun was setting on September 3rd, their son was born, a healthy baby boy with strong lungs and a full head of dark hair. "He is perfect," Benjamin said, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Lily, he is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Lily asked, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at their son, Benjamin said, "What about Thomas Benjamin? To honor your first husband and to remind us both that love can come more than once in a lifetime." Lily felt tears spring to her eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Thomas Benjamin Ellis," she said. "It is perfect." Tommy for short. Little Tommy proved to be a content baby, sleeping well and growing strong. Benjamin was a devoted father, walking the floor with his son at night when Tommy fussed, changing diapers without complaint, always eager to hold and play with the baby. Jack and the other ranch hands doted on Tommy as well, taking turns holding him and making silly faces to coax out his smiles. The ranch, which had once been a bachelor's domain, was now filled with the sounds of family, with laughter and baby cries and all the beautiful chaos Lily and Benjamin had dreamed of. As Tommy grew from a baby into a toddler, Lily and Benjamin expanded their operations. They hired 2 more ranch hands and brought in more cattle. Lily's field produced abundant harvests each year, and they were able to save money and gradually expand their holdings. When Tommy was 2 years old, Lily became pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to twin girls whom they named Rose and Violet. The twins were a handful, energetic and mischievous, keeping both parents constantly on their toes. "I think we might have our hands full with these two," Benjamin said one evening, watching as the toddler twins got into everything they could reach. "You wanted chaos," Lily reminded him with a laugh. "You got it." "I would not change a thing," Benjamin said, pulling her close. "This life, this family, it is more than I ever dreamed of." 2 years after the twins were born, their family expanded again with the arrival of another son whom they named James. And 3 years after that, another daughter, Emma, completed their family. The house was indeed full of noise and laughter, and the controlled chaos they had imagined. There were skinned knees to bandage, nightmares to soothe, homework to help with, and endless loads of laundry. There were also family dinners around a crowded table, bedtime stories read by lamplight, and quiet moments stolen between exhausted parents who still made time to tell each other, "I love you," every single day. As the children grew, they each developed their own personalities. Tommy, the eldest, was serious and responsible, already showing an aptitude for ranching that made Benjamin burst with pride. The twins, Rose and Violet, were inseparable and wildly creative, always putting on plays or building elaborate forts. James was the adventurous one, constantly exploring and getting into minor scrapes. And little Emma, the baby of the family, was sweet and sensitive, with a gift for taming even the wildest animals on the ranch. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin surprised Lily by arranging for Jack to watch the children so he could take her on a picnic, just the two of them, back to her original property. They had continued to farm the land all these years, but they had not been back to the house itself in quite some time. They spread a blanket under the same mesquite tree where Lily had rested that first day, watching Benjamin plow her field. The house was in good repair, used occasionally by ranch hands who needed a place to stay, but mostly it stood empty, a reminder of where their story had begun. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Benjamin asked, pouring them each a glass of lemonade from the basket he had packed. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once," Lily replied. "Sometimes I think about that day, about how desperate and alone I felt, and then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I had not even known how to say." "I think about that day too," Benjamin said. "About how close I came to just riding past, to not stopping. What if I had been in a hurry? What if I had decided it was none of my business? My whole life would be different." "Mine too," Lily said softly. "I do not even want to imagine what would have happened if you had not stopped. I probably would have lost this place. I do not know where I would have ended up." Benjamin took her hand, his thumb rubbing across her knuckles in the familiar gesture that still made her heart flutter even after 10 years. "But I did stop. And you did not send me away, even though you wanted to at first." Lily laughed. "I was so stubborn." "You still are," Benjamin teased. "It is one of the things I love most about you." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, looking out at the field that had brought them together. It was planted with corn again this year, the stalks tall and green, promising another good harvest. "Do you ever regret it?" Lily asked quietly. "Taking on a widow with nothing, with all her grief and debts and this stubborn little plot of land?" Benjamin turned to her with such intensity in his eyes that it took her breath away. "Never," he said firmly. "Not for 1 second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily. You and our children, the life we have built together, it is everything I could have hoped for and more." "Even when the twins put frogs in your boots?" Lily asked, trying to lighten the mood because she was dangerously close to crying. "Even then," Benjamin confirmed with a laugh. "Though I could do without the frogs, honestly." They spent the afternoon there, talking and remembering and simply enjoying each other's company without the demands of children and ranch work pulling them in different directions. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Benjamin helped Lily pack up the picnic supplies. Before they left, Lily walked over to the old plow, which was still stored in the barn. She ran her hand along the worn wooden handles, remembering how her hands had bled that first day, how impossible everything had seemed. "Thank you," she whispered, though she was not sure if she was thanking the plow or fate or God or just the universe in general for bringing Benjamin into her life at exactly the moment she needed him most. Benjamin came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Yes," Lily said, leaning back into his embrace. "Let's go home." They rode back to the main ranch as the stars began to appear, and even from a distance, they could see the warm glow of lamplight in the windows of their home. As they drew closer, they could hear the sounds of their children, probably arguing about something inconsequential but important to them. This was her life now, Lily thought. Not the one she had planned, not the future she had imagined when she was young, but it was real and full and beautiful in ways she never could have anticipated. Benjamin helped her down from the horse, and they walked hand in hand to the house. Before they went inside, Lily stopped and turned to her husband. "I love you," she said simply. I know I tell you that every day, but I want you to know I mean it more now than ever. Thank you for seeing me that day. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for changing my life." Benjamin cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. "Thank you for letting me in," he replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to love again." They went inside together, immediately engulfed by their children, all of them talking at once, demanding attention, showing them things they had made or found or accomplished while their parents were gone. Benjamin scooped up Emma while Lily took James's hand, and together they moved into the warm, chaotic heart of their home. That night, after the children were finally asleep and the house was quiet, Lily and Benjamin sat together on the porch, a nightly ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the desert air was cool and pleasant. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, a question he had asked her thousands of times over the years. "I was thinking about how strange life is," Lily said. "How you can lose everything, think your life is over, and then discover that it was really just beginning. How the worst moments can lead to the best ones if you are willing to stay open to possibilities." "That is pretty philosophical for this time of night," Benjamin teased. "I am serious," Lily insisted. "If Thomas had not died, if I had not been struggling that day, if you had not stopped to help, none of this would exist. Our children would not exist. This life we have built together would not exist." It makes you think about how everything is connected, how even the painful things can lead somewhere beautiful. Benjamin pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "I think you are right," he said. "I do not believe everything happens for a reason, because that makes it sound like people's pain is somehow justified or necessary. But I do think we can find meaning and purpose in what happens to us, that we can choose to let hard things make us bitter or make us better." "When did you get so wise?" Lily asked. "I learned it from you," Benjamin replied. "You were the one who chose to keep going after Thomas died, who chose to fight for your land even when it seemed impossible. You were the one who chose to let me in when you could have kept your heart closed." "All I did was show up. You did the hard work." "We both did the hard work," Lily corrected. "We still are. That is what makes this work, I think. We keep choosing each other every single day." "And I will keep choosing you," Benjamin said softly. "Every day for the rest of my life." They sat together until the night grew cold and they finally retreated inside to the warmth of their bed. As Lily drifted off to sleep, safe and loved and surrounded by the life she and Benjamin had built together, she felt nothing but gratitude. The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that come with time. The children grew, each of them developing their own dreams and paths. Tommy took over more and more of the ranch operations, working side by side with his father. The twins, inseparable as ever, both married brothers from a neighboring ranch and built houses on adjacent properties. James, true to his adventurous nature, became a deputy sheriff in Bisbee. And Emma, sweet Emma, became a teacher, working with children in the small schoolhouse in town. As grandchildren began to arrive, Lily and Benjamin found themselves in a new phase of life. They were no longer the young couple struggling to build something from nothing. They were the matriarch and patriarch of a growing family, the foundation upon which the next generation was building their lives. Jack passed away when Lily and Benjamin were in their early 50s, dying peacefully in his sleep after a long, full life. They mourned him deeply, and at his funeral, Benjamin spoke of how Jack had been like a father to him, had taught him everything he knew about ranching and about being a good man. "He was there the day I decided to stop and help a struggling widow with her field," Benjamin said, his voice thick with emotion. "And he was the first one to tell me I was falling in love with her. He had a way of seeing things clearly, of cutting through all the nonsense to get to the truth. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. They buried Jack on a hill overlooking the ranch, a spot he had always loved. And every year on the anniversary of his death, the whole family would gather there to remember him and to tell stories that kept his memory alive for the youngest generation who had never known him. As Lily and Benjamin moved into their 60s and then their 70s, they gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, turning more responsibility over to Tommy and his family. They spent their time with grandchildren, taking leisurely rides around the property, and sitting on the porch in the evenings, still holding hands, still finding new things to talk about after all these years. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a massive celebration. Children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren filled the ranch house and spilled out onto the grounds. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. As the party wound down and evening fell, Tommy stood up to make a speech. "I want to say something about my parents," he began, and the crowd quieted. "I have watched them my whole life, and I have never seen two people more committed to each other, more genuinely in love. They have shown all of us what marriage should look like, what partnership means, what it means to choose each other every single day." He paused, his voice getting emotional. "My father tells the story sometimes about the day he met my mother, about seeing her struggling with that old mule and deciding to stop and help. He says it was the best decision he ever made. But what he does not always mention is that my mother made a choice too. She chose to accept help when her pride wanted to refuse it. She chose to let someone in when her heart was still broken. She chose to love again when it would have been easier to stay closed off." Tommy raised his glass. "So here is to Mom and Dad, to 50 years of choosing each other, of building a life and a family that has blessed all of us. May we all be as lucky in love as you two have been." Everyone raised their glasses, and Lily felt tears streaming down her face as she looked around at all these people. This enormous, beautiful family that had grown from that one decision Benjamin had made to stop and help, from her decision to let him. Later, when most of the guests had left and only the immediate family remained, cleaning up and settling children down for the night, Lily and Benjamin slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in the same chairs they had sat in for decades, holding hands and looking up at the stars. 50 years, Benjamin said wonderingly. "Where did the time go?" "I have no idea," Lily replied, "but I would not change a single moment. Not even the hard parts," Benjamin asked. "There were some difficult times." "Not even those," Lily said firmly. "The hard times taught us things, made us stronger, made us appreciate the good times more." Benjamin lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I am so grateful that mule was being stubborn that day," he said. "If he had cooperated, I might have just ridden past." "Then I will have to thank that stubborn beast," Lily said with a laugh, "though he has been gone for over 40 years now. True love at first sight," Benjamin mused. "That is what it was, you know. I took one look at you standing there in that field, all fierce and determined, and I knew you were going to be important to me, even if I could not have explained how or why." "I think I knew too," Lily admitted. "I was just too scared to acknowledge it at first. Too wrapped up in my grief and my fear. But something in me recognized you, recognized that you were safe, that you were good." They sat in comfortable silence for a long time, just being together, just existing in the same space. After 50 years, they did not always need words. Sometimes the quiet said more than any conversation could. As the night grew late and they finally prepared to go inside, Benjamin stopped at the door and turned back to look at the ranch spread out before them. Lights glowed in the windows of the houses where their children and their families slept. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. The land stretched out in all directions, this piece of Arizona territory that had been transformed from harsh, unyielding earth into a thriving home through decades of hard work and love. "We did good," Benjamin said simply. "Yes," Lily agreed, slipping her arm around his waist. "We did very good." They went inside together. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. And as they settled into bed, still fitting together perfectly after all these years, Lily thought about that young widow who had been struggling alone in a field so long ago. If she could go back and tell that desperate, grieving woman what the future held, would she even believe it? Would she believe that the rancher stopping to help would become the love of her life? Would she believe that from that moment of struggle and despair would grow decades of joy and love and family? Probably not. But that was the beautiful thing about life. You never knew what was coming. You never knew when help would arrive, when love would find you, when everything would change. All you could do was stay open to the possibilities. Stay willing to accept help when it was offered. Stay brave enough to love again even when you thought your heart was too broken to ever be whole. Lily fell asleep that night with Benjamin's arms around her, grateful for every moment, every choice, every twist of fate that had brought them together and kept them together for 50 extraordinary years. And she knew, as certainly as she knew anything, that if she had it all to do over again, she would not change a thing. The final years of Lily and Benjamin's lives were peaceful ones. They watched their family continue to grow and thrive, secure in the knowledge that the legacy they had built would continue for generations to come. They took walks around the property when the weather was good, visited with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and spent quiet evenings together on the porch, still holding hands, still in love. Benjamin passed away first, dying peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. Lily was devastated by the loss, but she was not destroyed by it the way she had been when Thomas died. She had lived a long, full life with Benjamin. They had built something beautiful together, and that could never be taken from her. She lived for 3 more years, spending that time with family and working in the garden she still maintained near the house. On a warm spring afternoon, she passed away quietly while sitting in her chair on the porch, looking out at the land she and Benjamin had loved so much. They buried her next to Benjamin on the hill where Jack was also buried, 3 old friends together at last. The whole family gathered for the funeral, and Tommy spoke again, his voice stronger now even though his grief was deep. "My mother used to tell us that the secret to a good life was simple," he said. "Be willing to accept help when you need it, and be willing to give help when you can." That was how she lived, and that was what she taught all of us. He looked around at the assembled family, at the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who were Lily and Benjamin's legacy. "This family, everything we have, it all started because 2 people were brave enough to reach out to each other. My father saw someone in need and stopped to help. My mother was brave enough to let him, and from that simple act of kindness grew all of this." Tommy gestured to the land spread out around them. "So let's honor them by living the way they did. Let's be the kind of people who stop to help, who let others help us when we are struggling, who build families and communities based on love and mutual support. That is the legacy they left us, and it is up to us to carry it forward." As the service ended and people began to drift away, one of Lily's great-granddaughters, a girl of about 10, asked her mother a question. "Mom, is it true that great-grandma and great-grandpa fell in love because he helped her plow a field?" Her mother smiled. "That is how it started, yes. Your great-grandmother was trying to save her farm after her first husband died and she was struggling. Your great-grandfather stopped to help and they fell in love. The little girl thought about this for a moment. That is the most romantic story I have ever heard, she declared solemnly. And her mother had to agree. Because in a time and place where life was hard and uncertain, where survival was never guaranteed and loss was an ever-present reality, two people had found each other. They had chosen love over fear, partnership over pride, and together they had built something that would outlast them both. That was the story of Lily and Benjamin Ellis. It started with a struggling widow and a rancher who stopped to help. It grew into a love that sustained them through 50 years of marriage. And it ended with a legacy that would continue for generations, a testament to the power of kindness, the importance of accepting help, and the enduring strength of love. Years later, that same great-granddaughter, now grown with children of her own, would tell the story to her family. She would talk about the young widow named Lily who was trying to plow a field with a stubborn mule, and about the rancher named Benjamin who stopped to help. She would tell them about how that simple act of kindness turned into a love story that spanned 5 decades and produced a family that continued to thrive. And always, at the end of the story, she would say the same thing. Remember, when you see someone struggling, be the kind of person who stops to help, because you never know what beautiful things might grow from a single act of kindness. That was the lesson Lily and Benjamin had taught through their lives and their love. That was the legacy they had left behind. And it was a legacy that would endure, passed down from generation to generation, keeping their story alive forever.